Have you ever seen these super thick and super glossy epoxy wood finishes? While I was curious and skeptical, I kind of thought that most of these projects were a bit over the top and extravagant. Earlier this week, I was able to acquire a free sample of this epoxy super gloss tabletop coating. Now, being the cheap alley picker that I am, free is my language. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity to test out this product for myself. Now, if you're curious as well and you want to learn the basic process of how to apply a super glossy epoxy finish on this wood carving, stay tuned. I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos in preparation for this project, but most of them were over-explained, which just left me asking more questions. So I'm going to keep this video simple, clear, to the point, and as short as possible. First of all, there's many different types of epoxies, different formulations for different purposes, just like wood glue. There's so many different types of wood glues, and the purpose decides the product. And up until now, the only type of epoxy that I've ever used was this 2-part strong adhesive. Epoxies are specially formulated depending on what type of project you're doing. Some are for art projects and jewelry, some are for deep pouring and casting, and some, like the one I'll be using today, are for flat surfaces, like this, or a tabletop, or a bar top. You can think of this as a super thick coat finish that dries clear, smooth, quickly, and rock solid. Here's what came in my man crate. Half a gallon of epoxy resin, half a gallon of the liquid hardener. In the goodie bag comes a couple of stir sticks, this wide scraper to spread around the material, a wide foam brush, which is going to be a bit too large for this small project, and a few information cards. There's a lot of prep work to do before you tackle something like this for yourself. Read the directions, watch videos, and make sure you're confident of what you're doing before you begin. Instructions, well, they can be pretty particular for these products, so read them carefully. The instructions say that the perfect temperature to do this is between 70 and 80 degrees. It's a little cooler in here, so that might affect the drying time slightly. But I'm ready to begin mixing the product. Oh, before I do begin mixing, let's take a minute to talk about safety precautions. Wear safety goggles, gloves, and do this in an area that is well ventilated. This product is odorless and zero VOC, but the potential for chemical exposure is still there. So if you do have the proper mask on hand, you might want to wear it just in case. I prepared my project by getting it completely level. I checked it in both directions. Now I can begin mixing the product. This is a 1-to-1 ratio, equal amounts of the resin and an equal amount of the hardener. The first coat I'm going to give this is called the seal coat. It's about 1/16 of an inch thick. I'm going to let it dry, give it a second coat, which is the final coat, and that's going to be about 1/8 of an inch thick. I'll first pour 4 ounces of the resin into a container. You can use a scale if you want to. That might give you a more precise 1-to-1 ratio. I used this coverage calculator on the Upstart website and divided the required volume in half since this was for 1/8 of an inch thick and I'm only going 1/16. As you'll see, I ended up with too much epoxy left over. It did seem like a bit too much when I was doing it. I should have just went with my gut. I'll stir this for about 6 minutes by hand. You can use a drill if you want to with one of those stirring attachments, but just be careful not to over whip it. That'll make a lot of bubbles in the product. After about 6 minutes, I decided to pour this into a second container to be sure that no unmixed epoxy was trapped in the bottom edges. Another minute or two of mixing, and now I'm ready to pour. Using the provided scraper, I'm moving the material all the way to the edges. I'll use some of the spill off to coat the live edge bark. I do need to be careful not to move any of the small bark pieces that fall off and stick to the brush onto the top surface. Once all the material is evenly spread, you can see lots of these little tiny bubbles in the finish. These come out with heat. Some people use a heat gun, some a torch. You don't want to overburn. Keeping the flame about 5 inches away and quickly moving toward the bubbles will cause them to disappear. Don't linger. It only takes a second and the bubbles will disappear. I will go back a couple of times during the drying process to wipe the underside drips. You can clean up using denatured alcohol. This is amazing. It turned out great. I don't think the camera is going to do it justice, but it looks like it's covered with a piece of glass. You're probably going to see the lights reflecting off it. It looks way better in person. After the first hour, I was going back to check on this to make sure no air bubbles came. And when I did see a couple, I just hit it with the torch. After about 6 hours, it was still tacky to the touch. After 12 hours, it was completely dry, but it takes about 24 hours to cure. So earlier when I said that this is quick, it's kind of a relative term. One suggestion I might make is, if possible, you can cover your project in some sort of a plastic tent. That'll help prevent airborne debris. I do see a few dust particles on here. It's not bad. It still looks great, clear, and smooth. In fact, I really don't want to give it a second coat. I thought I was going to have to, but this is covered well enough that I don't need to give it a second coat. Now, if this was a tabletop or a bar top that was really going to take a beating, I would sand this down with 220 grit sandpaper, clean it with some denatured alcohol, and then apply the second coat. Let's talk about the cost of this stuff. For a gallon of this product, which is half a gallon of each, you can expect to spend between $65 and $95, depending on the brand you choose. This brand is called Upstart, and it's on the high end of that amount. Now that does sound expensive, but when you think about it, a gallon of polyurethane is going to cost you about 60 bucks anyway. I can't tell you if one brand is better than the other. You're going to have to read some online reviews and experiment yourself to decide which is your favorite brand. One other cool thing you can do is you can color this stuff. They got all these different pigment colors, and that would be something fun to play with as well. Hopefully, after watching this video, you're going to have enough confidence to give this a try when you find something that needs a heavy-duty, thick, and very durable finish. One that you can never get from a polyurethane or lacquer. So this is a nice option once you know how to use it. I was also a little concerned about all the trash that was going to end up in a landfill, but the epoxy actually peels right off of the plastic for easy cleanup. And now I could use this again. Thanks for watching Alley Picked. You know what you need to do now, right? Until next time, I'll meet you in the alley.